Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex topics, really dig into the details, and pull out the key knowledge for you.
Exactly.
Our mission today is, well, it's to cut through all the noise surrounding a really significant recent event, the tragic Ahmedabad air crash. We've sifted through a whole stack of sources, news reports, aviation analyses, all sorts, and we've distilled it down.
Trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah, into a concise, hopefully insightful exploration. So get ready to be well-informed on what happened, the immediate aftermath, those initial findings, and the broader impact, too.
That's right. Our goal here is really to connect the dots for you, give you clarity on this Ahmedabad plane crash, the one that happened on June 12, 2025.
Right.
We'll look at those critical moments, the terrible human toll, the emergency response, which was quite swift, and how this complex investigation got started.
It's interesting how quickly some things came out.
It is. What's particularly notable here is how fast certain insights began to surface, and also the ripple effects, how this tragedy spread far beyond just the crash site itself.
Okay, so let's unpack this. To
Yeah.
really understand the chain of events, we need to focus on the flight itself. Air India Flight AI-171. This was a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, registration VT-ANB.
A relatively new aircraft type.
Exactly. Departing Ahmedabad, India, and it was headed for London Gatwick.
Okay, and the timeline here is, well, it's absolutely critical for understanding those first few moments.
Hit us with it.
The aircraft took off at 13.38 IST, that's Indian Standard Time.
Which is 08.08 UTC.
Correct, 08.08 UTC. Now, crucially, the crew issued a mayday call, and then they lost contact within just seconds.
Seconds. Wow. At what altitude?
Very low, and approximately 625 to 650 feet.
So barely airborne.
Pretty much, and the crash itself happened roughly 30 seconds after takeoff.
Just 30 seconds. That is an incredibly narrow window.
It is. And it immediately raises a huge question, doesn't it? What on earth happened in those first moments in the air?
And what happened next?
Yeah.
It's just incredibly somber. The impact location.
Yeah.
It wasn't out in some remote field. It happened right in the Magani Nagar residential area.
Directly into the BJ Medical College Civil Hospital hostel complex.
A hospital complex. That fact alone, impacting a populated area, a hospital, it must have just amplified the tragedy immensely.
It did, tremendously. I mean, this location just magnified the catastrophe.
So the numbers.
Yeah.
What are we looking at?
Well, the plane itself was carrying somewhere between 230 and 242 people. The initial reports varied slightly.
Okay.
And out of everyone on board, only one person survived.
Just one.
One survivor, a British Indian national named Vishwash Kumar Ramesh. Reports say he was seated in 11A.
Incredible. One person out of over 200.
Which sadly makes this the deadliest Indian air disaster since 1996.
And that's just on the plane. What about on the ground?
That's the other layer of this tragedy. Beyond the, let's say, 241 onboard fatalities, estimates vary, but we're looking at between 24 and 30 ground casualties.
Oh, goodness.
So the total number of fatalities climbs to somewhere between 260 and 290 people.
It's almost impossible to comprehend that scale.
It really is. And, the sheer randomness of that single survival amidst such devastation, it's hard to process.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So given this catastrophic impact, right, in a built-up area near a hospital, how quickly could emergency services even get there? How did they respond?
The response was actually remarkably swift and highly coordinated, which is key in something like this.
Okay.
You had major forces mobilizing very quickly. The CRPF, that's the Central Reserve Police Force, they deployed 150 personnel.
Right.
The NDRF, the National Disaster Response Force, sent 90 personnel. The Indian Army contributed over 130 personnel.
It's a massive joint effort.
Huge. And they were working alongside the CISF, the Central Industrial Security Force, local police, fire services, obviously ambulance crews, hospital teams. Everyone converged.
And the nearby hospital must have been just overwhelmed.
The civil hospital's emergency wards were completely inundated with casualties, as you'd expect. They also moved quickly to set up DNA sampling centers at BJ Medical College.
For identification, right? A grim necessity.
Exactly, a difficult, heartbreaking task. But, the level of coordination needed for that kind of multi-agency response was so much chaos and so many lives at stake. It really does speak to a well-prepared emergency system, frankly.
Okay, so even while rescuers are doing this incredibly difficult work on the ground, the search for answers begins almost immediately, right?
Yeah.
Investigators will be looking for clues.
Absolutely. That process starts right away.
What were some of the first things they found? Any initial clues from the wreckage?
Well, some initial findings suggested that the RAM air turbine, the REC, had activated.
Okay, explain the RAT quickly.
It's an emergency system. It's like a small propeller that drops down to provide essential hydraulic and electrical power if the main engines or power sources fail.
So its activation points towards...
It often points towards a dual engine failure, or at least a significant power failure event.
Okay, that seems like a strong lead.
It does. But here's where it gets, well, intriguing. Despite that sign, the RAT activating the aircraft's engines and its maintenance records were reportedly clean.
Clean. So no known issues.
Apparently not. In fact, a brand new engine had been installed just back in March. It really does. And it presents a real challenge for investigators, when the obvious initial clues don't immediately line up with the known history of the aircraft.
Right. What else came out early on?
Well, the cockpit transcript confirmed that a Mayday call was indeed made.
Okay, so the crew knew something was critically wrong.
Yes. And there was video footage from the area, security cameras and such, that apparently showed a gradual descent before impact. Not a sudden plunge, but gradual.
Which might also suggest some level of control, perhaps? Or at least not a catastrophic structural failure in midair?
Potentially, yes. Or it could fit with an engine power issue. It's all part of the puzzle. Crucially, the black box, meaning both the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder that was recovered swiftly.
Which is invaluable.
Absolutely invaluable data for the investigation. India's AAIB, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, is leading the inquiry.
And they're getting help from others, too.
Yes. Collaboration from the UK's AAIB and the US NTSB, given the manufacturers and the destination.
And the timeline for answers?
They expect a preliminary report within weeks, which is quite fast. But a full, comprehensive report that could take years. These things are incredibly complex.
Understandable. Now, moving beyond the immediate tragedy and the technical investigation, how did an event like this ripple outwards? Through society, through the aviation industry?
Well, there were some immediate, perhaps unexpected reactions. One detail that sort of captured public attention, oddly enough, was this unofficial surge in demand for seat 11A.
The survivor's seat.
Exactly. The seat Vishwash Kumar Ramesh was in.
People were trying to book it.
Apparently so. Now, aviation experts were very quick to point out, and correctly so, that survival in a crash is overwhelmingly down to chance, location relative to impact forces, not a specific lucky seat number.
Right. It's not like buying a lottery ticket.
Not at all. But that human reaction, it reveals something, doesn't it? That psychological need to find some pattern, some sense of control maybe, in the face of just chaos.
Grasping for anything in the face of randomness.
Precisely. It's quite poignant, really. On a more official level, politically, Prime Minister Modi visited the site quite soon after.
Right.
He ordered full support, and both the Civil Aviation Minister and the Home Minister were dispatched to oversee the response personally.
Showing the gravity of the situation at the highest level.
Absolutely. And more broadly, you saw things like Bollywood actors canceling events as a mark of respect. Airlines across India were urged to reevaluate their safety protocols.
Sparking wider scrutiny.
Yes, renewed scrutiny across the industry. It just shows how an event like this resonates far beyond those directly involved. It touches public sentiment, prompts government action, and forces industry reflection.
So we've just taken a deep dive into the Ahmedabad air crash. We've moved from that critical moment of takeoff through the devastating impact of the response, the start of the investigation, and these wider implications. Our goal, as always, was to give you a clear, concise, and comprehensive understanding of what is undoubtedly a very complex event.
Yeah, and understanding events like this really requires pulling together a lot of information, often conflicting